Hello and welcome. My name's Heather. I'm a registered professional counselor and a certified life coach, and I'm a huge fan of Gilmore Girls. Today's video is part 2 of Rory's analysis, where we'll be focusing on her argument with Lorelai in the Basket Auction episode, where Jess outbids Dean for a romantic lunch with Rory. If you haven't seen part 1, I'll link it up here and in the description below. Let's get to the show.
Pizza book buying company?
Oh, yeah. Who? Jess?
Jess?
Yeah.
So it looks like Rory spent most of her day with Jess. From the last we saw of them, Jess asks Rory to grab some pizza with him. And now we find that they also went to the bookstore together. You can see some hesitation from Rory when she tells Lorelai that she was with Jess, and Lorelai was surprised. Rory can hang out with whoever she wants, but the important thing that's missing is communication and finding a solution that everyone is comfortable with.
Did you get the Dean issue resolved?
Not yet. He's coming over later and we're gonna smooth things over, hopefully.
I really wish they showed us how that conversation went, because I'm curious as to how she's going to explain to him that after the picnic, she was hanging out with Jess. I wonder if she would even be upfront with Dean about all of that. I mean, we saw how reluctant she was to tell Lorelai, and that hesitation says a lot. It could mean that she knows that she did something that she shouldn't have, or that she's worried about the judgment that might come, or both.
I'm just surprised that you're hanging out with him, that's all. He just doesn't seem like the nicest kid.
You don't know. You're just judging him by that one time they came over here. Trust me, he's got a really good side to him.
Lorelai does a good job starting the conversation. She owns her feelings, and she's voicing her concerns about Jess. Rory is trying to convince Lorelai that there's a good side to Jess, that the reason why their first encounter wasn't great is because he just moved here. He was upset with his mom, and he didn't know anyone, so that was probably all true, and it might have influenced how he behaved, but it doesn't explain why he's been acting this way this whole time since he's arrived. So why would Rory defend Jess? Maybe she likes him. Whether it be as a friend or more is debatable at this time, but she likes him. So it's possible that she's trying to convince others to change their minds about him and to give him a second chance. We see that earlier in the episode, she was telling Dean to ignore Jess or to stop hating him because it was a waste of energy. And now she's trying to do the same thing with Lorelai. The other possibility is that she doesn't know how to deal with conflict, and the only way that she knows how to deal with conflict is to try to keep the peace. And this happens all the time within our family dynamics and within our friend groups.
The vandalism, the stealing, the cutting school, the fighting.
How do you know about the fighting?
Well, Dean told me.
There's nothing wrong with a parent having concerns. What's important is how it's communicated. In this case, Lorelai wants to have some sort of influence on Rory, which is why she starts listing off all the terrible things that Jess has done since he's arrived at Stars Hollow as a way to persuade Rory. Honestly, Jess doesn't have the best reputation with the rest of the town, and Rory can't deny that all these things had happened. So what led to this point of the conversation is Rory being deflective and in denial about Jess, and she hasn't fully acknowledged or shown that she understands Lorelai's concerns. You can see their dynamics have shifted from how the conversation started, which they were communicating more as equals, but now we see that Lorelai has stepped into more of the mom role because she's trying to make sure that Rory understands her concerns about Jess. Much like a conversation you would see a parent have with a child, let's say the child wants to go on a roller coaster, but the parent says, "No, you're too young, it's dangerous, you're not tall enough, it's going to be too scary for you." And the child gets upset or throws a temper tantrum by saying that they are big enough and all their friends are going on the roller coaster and why can't they?
Rory, he's really upset about this.
So he went running to my mother?
It's a small town. Lorelai would have heard about it eventually, even if Dean didn't tell her. The other thing that might be happening is that since Rory is trying so hard to convince Lorelai that Jess is nice, he's got a good side to him, And when she finds out that Lorelai knows about the fight, she feels that she needs to get defensive because now her ability to judge others' characters is under question. And you can see that she's also attacking Dean as well by saying he went running to talk to her mother in a condescending way and completely ignored the fact that the reason why he went to talk to Lorelai in the first place is because he was upset.
No, he needed someone to talk to.
Well, he could have talked to me.
No, he couldn't, because you were off with Jess.
I wasn't off with Jess. I just outbid him.
I know.
Well, the rule is that
She was off with Jess. They kind of had a picnic, and then they went to grab pizza, and then they went shopping for books. That's at least a few hours, and given that it looks like it's evening time there, it's safe to assume that she was with him for most of the day. Now, remember when she said this?
it's lunch. We'll sit, we'll eat, it's over.
Maybe she feels guilty that she lied to Dean, knowing that he was worried and upset, and instead of finding Dean right after the picnic, she continued to hang out with Jess, and because she knows this, she continues to deflect by saying she was following the rules and Jess outbid Dean. Look at Lorelai's face, even she's not buying this. I'm not going to go too much in depth about this because I mentioned this in my last video, but there were other decisions that Rory could have made, and I talked about the reasons as to why she decided to go off with Jess. I'm not saying what's right or what's wrong, and I'm not here to bash on fictional characters. My intention is to provide some different context and mention some of my curiosities that I would bring up in a counseling session if I were to see these characters.
Guys like this get into trouble, which, if you hang out with them, gets you into trouble, and I don't want you to get into trouble.
I'm sorry, are we talking about Dean still, or are we suddenly talking about you?
So this is pretty common in fights, where we start just arguing about whatever comes up that may not be relevant to the conversation. Let's unpack this some more. Lorelai is telling Rory about some of her concerns she has around her hanging out with Jess. And she says that Dean also has those concerns. I think Rory is just so defensive that she's not even listening to Lorelai anymore. And this happens a lot in fights. When we get to this point in our conversations where it's no longer functional communication, everyone becomes concerned with being right, and they stop listening to the other person. One way Lorelai could have approached this is by saying, I want to express my concerns. I get worried that you and Jess are spending time together. I also think it's important for you to consider your relationship with Dean in all of this, because I'm sure he also has feelings around you hanging out with Jess. Of course, this is your life and your decision, and this is something you'll have to figure out with Dean. Maybe Rory is feeling personally attacked. Maybe she feels that she's being treated as a child and that her freedom is being infringed on because she can't choose who she wants to hang out with. And maybe she feels judged or frustrated that everyone is against her in a way. And I would ask Rory, okay, so you hear your mom express her concerns. How do you feel about that? That can give Rory an opportunity to slow down and say, I feel frustrated that I can't be friends with Jess without being judged. Or I feel torn between wanting to keep you and Dean happy and wanting to make a new friend. Right now, I don't really know why she's getting mad that everyone's worried about her safety, and we can only guess, but it's not sufficient enough to make a judgment.
I'm going for a walk.
Oh, Dean is going to be here any minute.
Well, he probably wants to talk to you anyhow.
And then Rory leaves just when Dean is about to come over, so she ditched him again? It's possible that she feels guilty for not being there for Dean, and in order to avoid feeling guilty, she finds anything to replace that guilt, and so she refocuses and gets mad over this one thing. This happens all the time, and mostly people aren't aware that this is happening. Guilt is one of those feelings that we don't really know how to process, and it's much easier to get angry instead. The other thing that can happen is that when we're ashamed of something, we tend to project that onto others. That's the meaning of projection. So let's say Rory is ashamed or she feels guilty for hanging out with Jess, or she wants to deny that she did anything wrong. And as a way of coping with that, we push that onto other people and attack it. But what we're really doing is trying to trick ourselves in thinking that it's an external problem when really it's internal. And so Rory is now fixating on the fact that Dean talked to Lorelai and treats it as if it's this huge betrayal when she really knows that she was the one who betrayed Dean in a way. Let's take a look at the next scene where they're at Friday night dinner.
Are you in a fight? I'm not.
Please.
Please what? You were the one who's been freezing me out all week.
I just haven't had anything to say.
Wow, so they've been in a fight all week? Yeesh.
Who's it?
No one.
Why won't you tell me who?
Because it's no one.
Is it Jess?
Why would you automatically assume that it's Jess?
Because. Why won't you tell me who it is?
It's Dean.
Did we actually find out if it was Dean or not? Because I thought they also weren't talking.
You want to read it? Oh, wait, no. Dean will probably tell you all about it later.
I'm going to be talking more about the conversation that Dean and Lorelai had next week, so make sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. But basically, they all hang out together, and I think in one of the later episodes, Lorelai tells Dean that she thinks of him as a friend. So was it really out of place for Dean to express his concerns to her? It sounds like Lorelai also had similar concerns as Dean. If you were in Rory's position, would this be something that you'd be upset about? Let me know in the comments below.
You know, you never liked Dean at the beginning.
That's because I didn't know him.
And now you don't like Jess?
That's because I know him.
This statement I find interesting because Rory and Dean were dating at the time. But Rory tried to make the same argument between her and Jess, even though they're only supposed to be friends. Maybe Rory is more mad at the fact that Lorelai doesn't like Jess than she is about Dean talking to her, but she can't express that anger because she secretly likes Jess, and instead she pretends she's really upset about the whole Dean thing. This wouldn't be far-fetched. Human beings are complicated, and we were never taught how to navigate our feelings or how to express them in a functional way.
He's trying to weasel his way in.
He's not trying to weasel his way.
In where?
In Rory's world. He has his eye on her and he's trouble.
He's not trouble.
We have seen some evidence of Jess trying to get close to Rory, and the picnic auction was another example of that. But this conversation isn't going anywhere. It's very surfacey, and it doesn't focus on how they're feeling or around finding a solution. Rather, it's more finger-pointing and accusatory. Rory leaves the table, and Lorelai talks to Emily about the situation, in which Emily agrees with Lorelai. Lorelai goes to find Rory to talk about it.
I am concerned about Jess.
Well, you shouldn't be.
But I am. However, you are a smart girl, you're a good judge of character, and the fact that he seems to like you gives him a couple of brownie points.
Lorelai is going to have concerns and worries, and that is completely normal, both as a mother and because it's Jess. She's doing a good job explaining her feelings. Rory could have said, I can understand why you're feeling concerned.
If you think he's a decent guy, I have to respect your judgment.
Thank you.
Good. So she's acknowledging Rory's autonomy and respecting her decision to be friends with Jess.
But I'm asking you to be careful.
I will.
Really careful.
I will.
And she states her request for Rory, which is for her to be careful. Again, it's okay to make requests in relationships. What's important is how it's communicated.
And you have to cut Dean some slack. He's so crazy about you. He didn't mean anything by coming to me. He just wigged.
I know.
And it looks like things with Dean is also smoothed over now. I really wish we saw the conversation they had and how this got resolved. It would have given us a much better understanding of how they resolve conflict and also how it was communicated.
Hello?
Hi.
Hi.
So they come back from dinner, and Rory waits until Lorelai is in her room before she sneaks off to call Jess. I don't know why she feels the need for Lorelai to be in her room first, especially if they just agreed that it's okay for them to be friends.
What are you doing?
Nothing, you?
Nothing.
Why'd you call?
I wanted to...
I'm glad you called.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Maybe she knows that she's not being careful. It's a slippery slope for sure, and it makes me wonder if it was actually Jess who paged her.
I promise. Commit to it one more time, and if it still is awful for you, I will make it up to you.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna hold you to that.
Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button to get notifications, because next week I'm going to be talking about the episode from Dean's perspective. In the meantime, check out my other therapist reviews videos, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Until then, be kind and love yourself.